So, Primavera de Filippi, thank you for your coming and your time to talk to me. Yes, and for the audience too.
My pleasure.
Let me introduce the subject about the intersection between law and blockchain. I'd like to know some framework about how manage regulation and blockchain. For example, in Latin America, taking in account that maybe will we read it or see for the Latin American audience?
I'm not an expert of South American regulation, but I can give a general framework, which is essentially there is this kind of there is an initial vision that the blockchain will operate in some way like outside of the purview of the law because it is decentralized, because it is transnational, because it is pseudonymous, etc. But very soon, just like with the internet early on, it has become obvious that there is actually a lot of ways in which the law can exert pressure, not directly on the operation of the blockchain, but on all the different actors that are influencing the operation of the network. There is basically, from like a legal perspective, there is like a lot of things that the law has defined at a time before the blockchain came in, and so it wasn't specifically geared towards this, but to the extent that those things are functionally equivalent to existing things that are regulated, obviously then the regulation expands into this domain. The most obvious example is the case of like token issuance, like ICOs and things like this, which are not at all like an IPO. Sometimes they are functional equivalent function, and therefore the regulatory authority will decide to take it under the same scope of the regulation. There is a lot of ways in which government, the regulatory authority, can find sufficient degree of equivalence in order to claim this should be regulated. And then of course the challenge is enforcement, because you don't have, like on the internet it's easy to enforce specific rules because you have the centralized intermediary, the online operator, and so the law can regulate the operator, and then the operator change the technical infrastructure, and by changing this infrastructure then it's also like affecting the way in which people can act on those platforms. And then when we're into a blockchain system, because we don't have those intermediate operators, the law needs to find those new points of tension, and essentially those are like either the developers or the users. You can criminalize the use, so in many countries forbid the use of blockchain, Bitcoin, etc. Or we need to identify like who are the new intermediaries, and in this case it can be like the cryptocurrency exchanges, the blockchain explorers, potentially the mining pool, the validation pool, etc. So there is, even if there is not one central point of control, there is multiple points that have more or less influence than others, and they can be somehow affected by the regulation because they exist as legal entities. And so that's the way in which the law can enforce its own rules, even into a decentralized system like the blockchain.
I think the last example of regulation in blockchain or crypto is the Genius Act. Are you aware of that? Or in United States, they regulate the stable coins.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you aware of that?
I haven't followed too much.
Okay. But they encourage people by the regulation to trust in stable coins, just because the treasurer can audit the companies which are managing all of that.
Yeah.
Are you aware about some similar acts, maybe in Europe?
Yeah, so Europe has the equivalent, which is the MiCA. So we have the MiCA regulation, which basically says that, so you have like everything that qualifies as security is regulated by the MiFID, and then everything that doesn't qualify as a security but is like a crypto asset is regulated with the MiCA, which basically says similarly thing that if you're an issuer of crypto assets, you need to be licensed, you need to like fulfill a lot of like specific conditions, which basically brings the issuer of crypto asset stable token in particular almost to a same degree of regulation as you will think of a bank or things like that, but of course a little bit less. But it does have an interesting exemption, which is the MiCA actually say that it does not apply to any application that is like fully decentralized. which is kind of like the DeFi exception. So of course the question is, what does it mean to be fully decentralized? Because like there is no criteria when I'm fully decentralized. But it's a way of nonetheless allowing, like, if you're like a centralized entity, a company that is issuing token is very different than if you're a protocol that is just issuing token. But of course, sometimes the protocol is also fully controlled by one entity. So there is a lot of ambiguity that emerges out of that, but there is at least this caveat.
So the other example that comes to my mind is when Polkadot decided to move forward to being a sponsorship of Inter Miami Football Club. So they told me the full story. Was very funny because they had a hard work to explain to the club that they are not a traditional company. So how could you explain to a traditional company that some sponsorship for a Polkadot, for example, will not be formalized in traditional terms, in a contract in paper which some guy signs?
Right.
How do you explain that to the lawyer of any company?
I mean, this is why there is now all this new trend for like legal wrappers, because this is the main problem. Is like, if you have like a blockchain-based organization, like a DAO or whatever, which wants to interface even just with people. Like if I'm a human and I'm paid because I'm a contributor to a DAO and I obtain tokens and I need to somehow declare that I received money from a DAO, it's really hard to tell where that money comes from because the DAO is not recognized by the legal entity. So whether I'm an individual, if I'm a physical person, or if I'm a moral person, if I'm a company, if the DAO wants to contract another company, it's very difficult because the other company needs to have a legal entity in face. And so the solution is basically to do the legal wrappers and then to just incorporate an organization which is the wrapper of a DAO, and then you're interacting with the wrapper, but in reality you're interacting with the DAO.
And given the fact that maybe in the traditional law, lawyers or advocates are losing their jobs or maybe just being replaced for some software sometimes.
Yeah.
Do you think that will help to fix the problem between traditional things and blockchain? Because maybe some software can make smart contracts easily than the traditional lawyers, or what do you think about your profession in the future with blockchain?
I mean, my profession as an academic or I'm an academic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm an academic. So my profession has a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Lots of fun. Lawyers, if that's the question, lawyers might also have a lot of fun because there is definitely a lot of more and more interesting case that will come in. Like as the blockchain world gets more entrenched into the actual society, once they start interacting more and more with existing companies, it will just only give more job to lawyers. Yeah. I'm not lawyer about lawyers, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're not yet. Also, you don't think something like, oh, maybe in 5 years will not work for lawyers just because always we will be in a software.
Lawyers will, as long as there is the intent of those blockchain entity to interface with the existing legal system or just legal entities, there will be a need for lawyers all the time.
Okay, and what about the people who works in ruling, like in the Congress or what? What do you think about this? Because do you feel like they don't have enough education on blockchain?
They probably need a little bit more, yeah. They could benefit from a little bit more.
Just to regulate or to understand this?
I think to understand, to do proper regulation, you need to understand, otherwise you don't do proper regulation.
Which could be the real interest in for politicians to understand? Maybe because, sometimes you say politics don't want to understand nothing or something that they can't use for themselves or own benefits. So maybe I don't know if the society will ask her there for understanding more about blockchain, because if not, maybe there was a lack of regulation if they don't rule blockchain. I don't know if you feel like it's needed, the rules, the new rules for the blockchain.
You need to have legal clarity. The problem today is that there is no rules, there is a lot of legal uncertainty. And so as a company, as an institution, as a public administration, it's very dangerous to use a technology that you have no idea how the law eventually will choose to interpret those activities. Then either you're like a blockchain native entity and you kind of have to be in blockchain based, but a lot of existing institutions might be reluctant to actually engage and adopt blockchain technology if they don't understand what the regulatory framework around it is about. And so actually providing a clear regulatory framework is almost a precondition for existing institutions to adopt this technology or even to interface with it.
So, Primavera, it was a pleasure for me to listen to you and to talk this way. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time. By the way, let's say to the people that in November you will be in Argentina.
Yes.
Yeah, speaking about blockchain and regulation. I know you're an expert and it's a pleasure to listen to you. So let's say just to the people, okay, she will be in November in Argentina, maybe Santiago del Estero, Buenos Aires.
I think I will be in different cities.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So whomever comes to understand blockchain and regulation, maybe politicians.
Yes.
Yes, I think so. Being me from Argentina, I really know that. Will be a pleasure to listen to you.
Yes. And it will be a pleasure for me to be in this country.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.